The prenup was ironclad, or so he thought. When Dominic van der Hoven walked his 22-year-old mistress through the front doors of his Hamptons estate, he didn't just break his pregnant wife's heart, he signed his own death warrant. That night, Esther vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a single chilling note on her pillow. Police suspected murder. The media suspected a breakdown. But 3 years later, when Dominic walked into a boardroom to save his collapsing empire, the CEO spinning the chair around wasn't a stranger. It was the wife he thought he'd buried. And she wasn't alone. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration of the merger between Van der Hoven Industries and the Kurosawa Group. The dining room of the estate in East Hampton was a theatre of excess crystal chandeliers from baccarat linens imported from a specific boutique in Milan, and a view of the Atlantic Ocean that cost $12 million alone. Esther sat at the foot of the long mahogany table, her hand resting instinctively on her stomach. She was 7 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching, wearing a velvet maternity gown that Dominic had criticized for being too frumpy just hours before. She looked tired. At 34, Esther had spent the last decade building Dominic's life, smoothing over his rough edges, and managing the social expectations of New York's elite. Dominic sat at the head, swirling a glass of 1996 Dom Perignon. He checked his Patek Philippe watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "They're late," Esther said softly, referring to the Japanese investors. "They aren't coming," Dominic replied, not looking at her. He set the glass down. "I cancelled them." Esther blinked, confused. "But the caterers. The chef is already prepping the Wagyu. Dominic, what is going on?" The heavy oak doors of the dining hall creaked open. It wasn't the staff. Walking in was a woman who looked like she had just stepped off a runway in Paris. She was tall, with raven black hair, cascading down a backless emerald dress that clung to her like a second skin. She couldn't have been older than 23. She walked with the confidence of someone who owned the room, or at least owned the man who owned the room. "Esther," Dominic said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Meet Sasha." Esther froze. The air left the room. She looked from the woman to her husband. "Dominic, who is this?" Sasha didn't wait for an introduction. She walked right up to Dominic, placed a hand on his shoulder, and smiled a sharp, predatory grin. "I'm the reason he cancelled dinner, sweetie." Dominic stood up, adjusting his blazer. "Esther, we need to be realistic. This marriage, it's been over for a long time. You're exhausted. You're hormonal. You're not the woman I need by my side for the next phase of the company." "I'm carrying your son," Esther whispered, her voice trembling. She gripped the table edge so hard her knuckles turned white. "And he will be well taken care of," Dominic dismissed, waving a hand. "But Sasha is moving in. Tonight. The East Wing is being cleared out for her. I've spoken to my lawyers. You can stay in the guest cottage until the baby is born. After that, we'll discuss custody and a settlement." The cruelty was so absolute, so casual, that Esther couldn't process it. She looked at Sasha, who was inspecting her manicured nails, looking bored. "The guest cottage," Esther repeated. "You're moving your mistress into our home and moving your pregnant wife to the servants' quarters." "It's a 3-bedroom cottage, Esther. Don't be dramatic," Dominic snapped. "Look, I'm tired of the pretense. Sasha understands me. She understands the business. You've become a ghost in this house. Anyway." Esther slowly stood up. The pain in her lower back flared, but she locked her knees, refusing to collapse. She looked at the man she had loved since college, the man she had supported when he was nothing but an ambitious kid with a maxed-out credit card. "You are making a mistake, Dominic," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, it wasn't screaming, it was terrifyingly calm. Sasha laughed, a tinkling hollow sound. Oh, honey, the only mistake was thinking you could keep a man like him with nothing but a casserole recipe and a baby bump. Go pack your bags. Esther didn't say another word. She didn't throw her wine glass. She didn't scream. She simply turned around and walked out of the dining room. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor of the hallway, a rhythmic click, click, click that faded into silence. Dominic poured another drink. Finally, he muttered. I thought she'd never leave. She's pathetic, Sasha purred, sitting in Esther's chair. But upstairs, Esther wasn't packing for the cottage. She was standing in the master bedroom, looking at the safe behind the painting. She didn't take the diamonds. She didn't take the cash. She took a single thin file folder and a small USB drive tucked into the back corner. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark, churning ocean. The storm that had been forecast for days was finally rolling in. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cliffs below. You want a ghost, Dominic? She whispered to the glass. I'll give you a ghost. The next morning, the scream of the housekeeper, Mrs. Galloway, tore through the silence of the Hamptons estate. Dominic, hungover and irritated, stumbled out of the master bedroom, Sasha still asleep in the bed, and wrapped a silk robe around himself. What in God's name is that noise? He found Mrs. Galloway in the hallway, leading to the guest cottage, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. The door to the back terrace was wide open. The storm had raged all night, and the floor was soaked with rain. But it wasn't the rain that had Mrs. Galloway screaming. It was the blood, a trail of it. Small droplets at first leading from the kitchen or smearing a Morgan the terrace tiles and ending at the edge of the cliff that dropped down to the rocky shoreline. Caught on a jagged branch of a scrub oak near the edge was a piece of fabric, shredded white velvet. Esther's maternity gown. Call the police, Dominic said, his stomach dropping. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of fear. Not for Esther, but for how this would look. Within an hour, the estate was swarming. Detective Miller, a weary man with a cynical set to his jaw and a trench coat that had seen better days, was already directing the crime scene unit. Mr. Vanderhoven, Miller said, walking into the living room where Dominic was pacing. Sasha was sitting on the sofa, scrolling on her phone, looking annoyed that she couldn't leave for her spa appointment. Where is she? Dominic demanded. Did she fall? Did she jump? Miller narrowed his eyes. We don't know yet, but there's a significant amount of blood, sir. And with the tide coming in last night, if she went into the water, the current would have taken her out miles by now. She was upset, Dominic said, quickly crafting the narrative. I told her I wanted a divorce last night. She was hysterical, unstable. Hysterical? Miller looked at Sasha. And I assume this young lady was present. I'm his fiancée. Sasha lied smoothly. Mistress? Miller corrected, jotting something in his notebook. So you bring the mistress home, tell the pregnant wife to get out, and the next morning there's blood leading to a cliff. You know how this looks, right? I didn't touch her, Dominic roared. Check the cameras. We did, Miller said calmly. The security system was disabled at 2 a.m. Who has the code besides you? Dominic froze. Only Esther. And she's gone, Miller said. We've got the Coast Guard searching the water, but in this weather. Honestly, Mr. Vanderhoven, you should prepare yourself. No one survives a fall from those cliffs in a storm, especially not a woman in her 3rd trimester. The investigation dragged on for weeks. The media circus was relentless. The Hamptons horror billionaire's pregnant wife presumed dead. Dominic was dragged through the mud, His stock prices dipped, but Dominic was a shark. He spun the story. He played the grieving husband who had simply fallen out of love, but never wanted harm to come to Esther. He hired the best defense attorneys in New York. Without a body, the police couldn't pin a murder charge on him, though the suspicion hung over him like a shroud. 3 months later, the police officially scaled back the search. Esther was declared missing, presumed dead. Dominic wasted no time. He held a small, tasteful memorial service, which he left early, and then immediately began renovations on the estate to suit Sasha's tastes. He erased every trace of Esther. Her clothes were donated, her paintings were sold. The nursery she had painstakingly decorated was turned into a home gym for Sasha. "It's finally over," Dominic said one evening, looking out at the calm ocean, a glass of whiskey in hand. Sasha came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We won," she whispered. "We have the house, we have the money, and no baggage." But they were wrong. The first crack in their perfect new life appeared 6 months after the disappearance. Dominic was in his office in Manhattan, a corner suite overlooking Central Park. He was on a call with his private banker at Goldman Sachs. "What do you mean, access denied?" Dominic barked into the phone. "It's my account. I'm trying to transfer $5 million to the offshore holding in the Caymans." "I'm sorry, Mr. van der Hoeven." The banker's voice was trembling. "But that account, it was a joint trust. It required dual authorization." "So my wife is dead. I have the death certificate or the presumption of death decree. Send it through." "It's not that, sir. The account, it's empty." Dominic stopped breathing. "Excuse me. The funds were moved this morning. All of it. $50 million. "Moved where, by who?" Dominic screamed, standing up so fast his chair toppled over. "By the co-signatory," the banker said. "The authorization code was used. It was verified biometrically." "That's impossible," Dominic hissed. "Esther is at the bottom of the Atlantic." "Sir, the transfer was routed through a shell company in Zurich. The name of the receiving entity is Nemesis Holdings." Dominic slammed the phone down. His hands were shaking. Biometrically verified, fingerprint or retinal scan. He drove home in a daze. When he walked into the estate, he found Sasha throwing a vase, a Morgan the room. "My credit cards!" she shrieked. "They were declined at Bergdorf's. Do you know how humiliating that is?" Dominic ignored her. He ran to his office, safe, the one behind the painting. He spun the dial heart, hammering against his ribs. He opened the heavy steel door. The cash was there. The diamonds were there. But the file folder was gone. He rifled through the papers. The folder that was missing contained the original deeds to the company's intellectual property, the patents that van der Hoeven Industries was built on. Without those patents, his company was just a shell. And then he saw it. Tucked into the back of the safe where the folder used to be was a small cream-colored envelope. Dominic picked it up with trembling fingers. It smelled faintly of lavender Esther's scent. He tore it open. Inside was a sonogram photo, a picture of a baby, and on the back, written in elegant cursive script, "He has your eyes, but he'll have my empire." Dominic fell back against the wall, sliding down, until he hit the floor. She wasn't dead. Esther was alive. And she wasn't just hiding. She was hunting. Paranoia is a slow poison, and Dominic drank it by the gallon. In the weeks following the discovery of the empty safe, Dominic hired 3 different private investigation firms. He burned through nearly $1 million in retainers, demanding they scour the globe for Esther van der Hoeven. He checked flight manifests, border Morganing's hospital records in 50 states. Nothing. It was as if she had dissolved into the sea foam that night. "She has to be somewhere," Dominic screamed at Rayburn, the lead investigator of the firm Shield and Sword. Rayburn, a man with a thick neck and a thicker skin, just shook his head. "Mr. Vanderhoven, we've run facial recognition on every major transport hub in Europe and Asia. We've monitored her old friends, her parents' grave sites, her college roommates. There is zero chatter. No credit card hits. No digital footprint. If your wife is alive, she's not Esther anymore." Meanwhile, the rot in Vanderhoven Industries began to smell. Without the physical patent deeds for the company's flagship biotech filtration system, the Blue Ocean project, Dominic couldn't license the technology to the government. The Department of Defense contract worth $3 billion was put on hold, pending verification of ownership. "Just print a new deed," Sasha shrieked one morning over breakfast. The estate was looking shabbier. Dominic had cut the landscaping staff to save cash flow. Sasha was wearing a robe that was now 2 seasons old, a tragedy in her eyes. "It doesn't work like that, you idiot!" Dominic rubbed his temples. The original deeds were bearer bonds, effectively. Whoever holds the physical paper holds the leverage. If I declare them lost, the stock tanks because it looks like incompetence. If I say they were stolen, the board will demand to know why I didn't report it 6 months ago. So we're just poor. Sasha's voice cracked. "We are liquidity challenged," Dominic corrected, though the panic in his chest said otherwise. Sasha didn't handle liquidity challenged well. As the months dragged into a year, the parties stopped it. The Hamptons crowd, sensing the scent of failure, like sharks, sensing blood, stopped inviting them to galas. Dominic was toxic, a man whose wife likely died at his hands, and whose business was bleeding out. One Tuesday in November, Dominic came home early to find a moving truck in the driveway. He stormed inside. "What is this?" Sasha was in the foyer directing movers who were carrying out the Louis XIV commode. She looked at him with cold, dead eyes. "I'm leaving, Dom. Leaving to go where you have nowhere to go. I made you." "You made me a pariah," she spat. "I can't get a table at Le Bernardin because they think I'm an accomplice to murder. And now you can't even pay for my platinum card bill. I found someone else. Someone with liquidity." "Who?" Dominic demanded, stepping forward. "Who would take you?" "Grant O'Malley." Dominic staggered back. O'Malley was his biggest rival, a crude, loud-mouthed tech billionaire who had been trying to buy Vanderhoven Industries for pennies for years. "He thinks I'm a victim of your manipulation." Sasha smiled, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "He's going to help me write a memoir, Surviving the Monster. It's already got a publisher interested." "Get out," Dominic whispered. "I am." "Oh, and Dom." She paused at the door. "Grant says check the stock ticker. Something big is happening." She slammed the door, leaving Dominic alone in the echoing, empty house. He scrambled for his phone, pulling up the market watch. His breath hitched. VDI Vanderhoven Industries, down 40%. Someone was dumping stock, millions of shares. It was a hostile sell-off designed to crash the price, and buying up the wreckage was a single opaque entity, Nemesis Holdings, the same name from Zurich. Dominic poured himself a drink, but his hands shook so badly the amber liquid splashed onto his shirt. He looked at the painting of himself that hung over the fireplace, a portrait commissioned 5 years ago. He looked young, invincible. Now, looking in the mirror, he saw grey hair, deep lines, and eyes rimmed with red. The phone rang. It was the chairman of the board. "Dominic!" The chairman's voice was like gravel. "We're calling an emergency shareholder meeting next Friday. The company is vulnerable. We have a tender offer from Nemesis Holdings to buy a controlling stake." "Reject it," Dominic snarled. "We can't. The offer is generous, and frankly, with the patent issues and the PR nightmare you've become, the board is inclined to accept." "Who is behind Nemesis?" Dominic asked, though deep in his gut he already knew the answer. We don't know. It's a blind trust represented by a law firm in London. The principal investor will reveal themselves at the meeting to finalize the signature. Dominic threw the phone into the fireplace. He watched the plastic melt and bubble. Come out, Esther, he whispered to the empty room. Come out and fight me. 3 years. It had been 3 years since the night of the storm. The boardroom of Vanderhoven Industries was on the 45th floor of a glass skyscraper in Manhattan. It was a cold, sterile room, dominated by a table long enough to land a plane on. Dominic sat at the head, but he didn't look like a king anymore. He looked like a cornered rat. His suit was expensive, but it hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds. His eyes darted around the room, scanning the faces of the 12 board members who had once worshipped him. Now they wouldn't meet his gaze. The situation is untenable, Dominic, said Archibald, the oldest board member. The stock is trading at $12. 3 years ago, it was at $1.50. We have to sell. We are not selling to a ghost company. Dominic slammed his hand on the table. Nemesis Holdings is a predator. They will strip this company for parts. They are offering $30 a share, Archibald countered. It's a lifeline. The double doors at the far end of the room opened. The room went silent. A team of lawyers in sharp charcoal suits marched in first, flanking the entrance like a Praetorian guard. And then she walked in. Dominic stopped breathing. It was Esther. But it wasn't the Esther he remembered. The Esther he knew wore pastels and soft fabrics. She wore her hair in messy buns and apologized when she interrupted people. She was soft, pliable, safe. This woman was steel. She wore a white power suit, tailored to absolute perfection, the jacket cinched at the waist to highlight a silhouette that was leaner, stronger. Her hair was cut into a sharp, asymmetrical bob, dyed a platinum blonde that caught the light like a blade. She wore blood-red lipstick and heels that clicked against the floor with the rhythm of a ticking clock. She didn't look at the board members. She walked straight to the opposite end of the table facing Dominic. She placed a briefcase on the table and snapped the locks open. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Gentlemen, her voice was lower, huskier than before. I believe you have my offer. Esther, Dominic whispered. He stood up, his legs wobbling. Esther, my God, you're alive? She looked at him then. Her eyes, once warm and brown, were now cold and hard. Sit down, Mr. Vanderhoven. This is a business meeting. Business meeting. You're my wife. You've been gone 3 years. I was accused of murder. And whose fault was that? She arched a brow. I seem to recall being evicted from my home while 7 months pregnant to make room for a... What was her name? Sasha. She glanced around the room. Is Sasha here today? No pity. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs went through the board. Esther, please, Dominic pleaded, trying to switch tactics. He put on his charming husband face, though it cracked under the strain. I've been looking for you. I was worried sick. The baby... Do we have a child? Esther smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. No, I have a child. She gestured to the door. A nanny walked in, holding the hand of a toddler, a little boy about 2.5 years old. He had curly dark hair and bright, inquisitive eyes. He was dressed in a miniature navy blazer. Dominic stared. The boy was the spitting image of him. The nose, the chin. It was undeniable. Meet Lloyd, Esther said softly. Dominic took a step toward the boy. My son. Esther stepped in between them, her hand raised. Don't take another step. He's my son, Esther. You can't keep him from me. Actually, I can. You see, Dominic, when you threw me out, you were very specific. You said, and I quote, he will be well taken care of. After that, we'll discuss custody. But you never filed for custody. You declared me dead. And in doing so, you relinquished all parental rights to a deceased person's estate. I can fight that in court. You can try, Esther said, pulling a document from her briefcase. But you won't have the money to hire a lawyer. She slid the document down the long table. It stopped perfectly in front of Dominic. What is this? The patent deeds, Esther said. The ones you lost. Nemesis Holdings, my company, now owns the intellectual property rights to the Blue Ocean filtration system. I registered them in Zurich 2 years ago. Vanderhoven Industries has been using my technology illegally for 24 months. The board members gasped. Archibald looked at Dominic with horror. Dominic, is this true? You didn't hold the patents. She stole them. Dominic screamed, pointing a shaking finger. I took what was mine, Esther corrected coolly. I developed the initial chemical formula for Blue Ocean in grad school, Dominic. You just put your name on the patent application. But the original lab notes, the proofs, they were in that file. Legally, I am the inventor. She leaned forward, placing her hands on the table. So here is the deal. I am suing Vanderhoven Industries for $3 billion in unpaid licensing fees and damages. That will bankrupt the company immediately. Your stock will go to zero. You will all lose everything. Archibald wiped sweat from his forehead. Is there an alternative, Miss Vanderhoven? There is, Esther said. I drop the lawsuit. I license the technology back to the company for $1 a year. And in exchange, Archibald asked. Esther's eyes locked onto Dominic. In exchange, I want the CEO's chair. And I want Dominic removed from the board, stripped of his shares, and escorted out of the building. Immediately. You can't do that, Dominic yelled. I built this. You built it on my back, Esther said. And then you tried to break me. You thought I was weak because I was kind. You thought I was stupid because I was in love. But you forgot one thing, Dominic. What? He snarled. A mother will burn the world down to warm her child. She looked at little Lloyd, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. I didn't just survive, Dominic. I evolved. Now get out of my chair. Archibald looked at the other board members. They exchanged quick, desperate glances. It wasn't a hard choice. Money or loyalty to a failing leader, all in favor of the motion to remove Dominic Vanderhoven as CEO and appoint Esther. Excuse me, what is your surname now? Archibald asked. Esther straightened her jacket. Just Van Snow. That name is on the list. Just Esther Morgan. Appoint Esther Morgan as CEO. 11 hands went up. Motion carried, Archibald said. He looked at Dominic. Security is waiting in the hall, Dominic. Please hand over your badge. Dominic looked at the hands raised against him. He looked at the wife he had discarded. He looked at the son he would never know. He lunged. You bitch, he screamed, diving a Morgan the table. But the security guards were faster. They burst in, tackling Dominic to the plush carpet. He thrashed and cursed, foaming at the mouth, all dignity gone. Esther didn't flinch. She picked up Lloyd, balancing him on her hip. She walked over to where Dominic was pinned on the floor, his face pressed against the shoe of a guard. She crouched down, just out of reach. Do you know where I went that night? Dominic, she whispered. Dominic glared at her, panting. I didn't jump. I climbed down the maintenance ladder to the cove. I hid in the sea caves until the tide went out. I watched the police lights from the dark. I was cold and I was terrified. But then I felt Lloyd kick, and I realized I didn't need you. I never needed you. She stood up. Take him away. As they dragged Dominic out, screaming threats, Esther turned to the window. The view of Manhattan was breathtaking. Mama, Lloyd asked, tugging on her lapel. Man gone. Yes, baby. Esther kissed his forehead. The bad man is gone. But as the door closed, Esther's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message. She pulled it out. It was from an unknown number. Nice performance. You got the company. You got the revenge. But you forgot about the other person in the house that night. I saw you climb down the ladder, Esther. I saw everything. And now it's my turn to get paid. Esther's blood ran cold. She looked at the text again. Attached was a grainy photo taken from the top of the cliff, looking down into the darkness. In the photo, a woman in a white dress was clinging to a rusty ladder. Someone else had been watching. Esther stood in the center of her new office, Dominic's old office, staring at the phone screen. The text message burned into her retinas. The photo was grainy, taken in low light, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A woman in a white dress hair, lashed by the wind, gripping the rungs of the maintenance ladder that led down the cliffside. It was the one loose thread in her perfect tapestry of revenge. Esther didn't panic. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had spent 3 years living in a small apartment in Zurich, under the alias Esther Morgan, raising a newborn while navigating the cutthroat world of international patent law. She had learned to turn fear into fuel. She typed a reply, 10 o'clock, p.m. The pier, 17 rooftop. Come alone. The response was immediate. Bring your checkbook. Esther slid the phone into her blazer pocket. She pressed the intercom button on her desk. Yes, Ms. Morgan. Her assistant's voice chirped. Cancel my dinner with the Japanese delegation and call my driver. I need to make a stop before tonight. At 9:45 p.m. The wind off the East River was biting. Pier 17 was deserted, the tourists long gone, leaving only the sound of water lapping against the pilings and the distant hum of Brooklyn traffic. Esther stood near the railing, wrapped in a camel hair trench coat, watching the Staten Island ferry cut through the black water. She heard the click of heels behind her unsteady, jagged steps. You look good, Esther, a voice sneered. For a dead woman. Esther turned slowly. Standing under the yellow glow of a security light was Sasha, but the glossy, runway-ready mistress of 3 years ago was gone. In her place was a woman who looked frayed at the edges. Her hair was brittle, her designer bag was scuffed, and there was a desperate, hungry look in her eyes. Sasha. Esther said, her voice smooth as glass. I'd say it's nice to see you, but we both know I don't lie anymore. Cut the crap, Sasha snapped, shivering in a jacket that wasn't warm enough for the weather. She pulled out a cigarette, her hands shaking as she lit it. You played everyone. The police, the media, Dominic. You made him look like a murderer. He killed my marriage. Esther shrugged. He killed the woman I was. I just let the world see the monster he really is. You framed him. Sasha stepped closer, smoke billowing from her lips. I saw you that night. I was on the balcony having a smoke after you stormed out. I saw you cut your arm with a kitchen knife. I saw you smear the blood. And I saw you climb down that ladder. Esther didn't flinch. And yet you said nothing. Sasha laughed bitterly. To who Dominic? He was already talking about how much easier his life would be if you were gone. If I told him you ran away, he would have just divorced you, and I would have been the second wife with a prenup. But if you were dead, or presumed dead, he got the sympathy. He got the freedom. And I got to be the grieving fiancé. Strategic, Esther admitted. Cruel, but strategic. So why come to me now? Because he's broke, Sasha screamed, her composure cracking. He's toxic. He has nothing. And that other guy, O'Malley. He kicked me out last week because he found out I was pawning his watches. I have nothing, Esther. And you You have $1 billion company." Sasha reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "I want $50 million, cash, wiring to a Swiss account. And if I say no, then this photo goes to the FBI, proof that you staged your own death. That's fraud, Esther. Waste of police resources, perjury. It proves Dominic didn't hurt you. It might not get him the company back, but it will send you to prison. And who will raise your little bastard then?" Esther's eyes darkened. The mention of Lloyd shifted the air around her. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You think you have leverage?" Esther said softly, stepping toward Sasha. "But you're playing checkers, Sasha. I'm playing three-dimensional chess." "I have the proof." Sasha waved the envelope. "You have a photo of a woman on a ladder," Esther corrected. "A woman fleeing an abusive husband. A husband who had just threatened her, moved his mistress into her home, and declared he was taking her unborn child. Do you know what a jury will see in that photo, Sasha? They won't see fraud. They'll see a terrified pregnant woman escaping a domestic nightmare to save her baby." Sasha's mouth opened, but no words came out. "And as for the fraud," Esther continued, circling her like a shark, "I never filed a police report. I never claimed he killed me. The state made that assumption. I just left. I went to Europe to protect my son. Is it a crime to leave a cheating husband without saying goodbye? No." Esther stopped in front of her. "So go ahead. Release the photo. The headlines will read, 'Miracle Mother Escaped Abuse to Build Empire.' It will only make my stock price go higher." Sasha trembled. Her leverage was evaporating before her eyes. She hadn't thought about the narrative. She had only thought about the act. I'll tell them you cut yourself, that you faked the blood. Your word against mine," Esther said. The word of a discredited gold-digging mistress against the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Who do you think they'll believe? Sasha slumped against the railing, defeated. She looked at the dark water below. I need money. I have debts, Esther. Bad debts. To bad people. Esther watched her for a long moment. She saw the pathetic reality of the woman who had once destroyed her life. She didn't feel satisfaction. She just felt pity. Esther reached into her coat and pulled out a check. She had already written it. Here. Esther held it out. Sasha looked at it. Her eyes widened. 100,000. It's enough to clear your debts and get a plane ticket to somewhere far away, Esther said coldly. But this is it. If I ever see you again, if I ever hear your name, if you ever try to contact Dominic, I will crush you. I have lawyers who kill for sport, Sasha. Don't test me. Sasha snatched the check. She looked at Esther with a mixture of hatred and awe. You really aren't her anymore, are you? The woman who baked casseroles. She died on the cliffs, Esther said, turning away. Now get out of my city. Sasha ran. The sound of her heels faded into the night. Esther took a deep breath of the salty air. She had neutralized the immediate threat. But she knew Dominic wasn't done. A man like him didn't fade away. He would try something desperate. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Rayburn, she said, when the investigator answered. Ms. Morgan. Keep a tail on Sasha. She's going to run. But if she stops, if she makes contact with Dominic, I want to know immediately. Understood. Esther hung up. She looked at the skyline of Manhattan, glittering like a diamond necklace. She had won the battle, but the war wasn't over. Dominic van der Hoven was living in a nightmare. His estate was now room 204 of the Starlight Motel in Queens near the airport. The wallpaper was peeling, The carpet smelled of stale beer and regret, and the constant roar of planes taking off overhead was a cruel reminder of the jets he used to own. He sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at a bottle of cheap vodka. He was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. His suits were in a pile in the corner, wrinkled and stained. He had lost everything. His assets were frozen pending the lawsuit. His friends had blocked his number. Even his club membership had been revoked. There was a knock on the door, a frantic, rhythmic pounding. "Go away!" Dominic yelled. "Maid service is on Tuesdays." "Open the door, Dom, it's me." Dominic froze. He knew that shrill voice. He stumbled to the door and threw the chain lock off. Sasha stood there, soaking wet from the rain, clutching her purse. "What do you want?" Dominic growled, trying to close the door. "Came to see the wreckage you caused." "I can get it back for you," Sasha said, jamming her foot in the door. "I can get it all back. Let me in." Dominic hesitated, then stepped back. Sasha walked into the dingy room, wrinkling her nose at the smell. "Nice place," she muttered. "Spit it out, Sasha. I'm busy drinking myself to death." "I saw Esther." Dominic dropped the bottle cap. It rolled under the bed. "You saw her where? Pier 17 tonight." Sasha sat on the wobbly chair. "I tried to squeeze her. I had evidence, a photo of her escaping that night, proving she staged the scene." Dominic's eyes widened. "You have proof. Give it to me." "I don't have it anymore," Sasha lied. She wasn't going to tell him she sold her silence for $100,000. She needed Dominic to destroy Esther so she could feel powerful again. But she needed to be smart. "She destroyed the copy I had. She threatened me. She thinks she's untouchable, Dom." She stood there in her $2,000 coat and looked at me like I was an insect. "She's a monster," Dominic whispered, pacing the small room. "She stole my life. She stole my son. She's vulnerable, Dom." Sasha leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "She thinks she bought me off. She thinks I'm leaving town, but I kept a digital copy on a cloud server." This was a lie, but Dominic didn't know that. Sasha's plan was forming in real time. She didn't have the photo, but she knew where the bodies were buried. She knew the layout of the Hamptons' house. She knew the old codes. "So give it to the police," Dominic said. "No," Sasha shook her head. "The police won't care. She spun me a story about escaping abuse. A jury might buy it. We need to destroy her in front of the people who matter, the shareholders, the investors." "How?" "The Blue Ocean Launch Gala," Sasha said. "It's this Saturday, at the Met Museum. She's going to unveil the new tech to the world. Every major investor tech giant and news outlet will be there. It's her coronation. And we crash it." Sasha smiled, a cruel, sharp expression. "We don't need the photo. We need the truth. We need to create a scene so big, so scandalous, that the board loses confidence in her stability. You know her, Dom. She puts up a front of steel, but inside, she's still the girl who cries when people yell. If we corner her, publicly, if we accuse her of the fraud and bring up the baby—" "The baby," Dominic muttered. "Lloyd. Exactly. We go there. We demand to see your son. We cause a scene on live TV. We scream that she kidnapped him, that she faked her death to steal a child from his father. In this political climate, billionaire CEO steals child from father. It's a PR nuclear bomb. The stock will wobble. And when it wobbles, you file an emergency injunction for custody." Dominic stopped pacing. A spark of the old Dominic returned to his eyes. The shark was waking up. "If I get custody of the boy," Dominic mused, "then you control the heir to the fortune." Sasha finished. "Esther won't fight you if you have the boy. She'll give up the company to keep him. It was diabolical, it was messy, and it was their only shot. We need to look the part, Dominic said, running a hand through his greasy hair. We can't walk into the Met looking like this. I have money. Sasha patted her bag where the check lay. We get cleaned up, we get suits, and we walk into that gala like we own the place. One problem, Dominic said. Security. They'll have my face on a watch list. Sasha smirked. You forget, Dom. I used to coordinate the events for your company. I know the catering company she uses. Gourmet & Co. They hire temp staff for these big events. We don't walk in the front door. We walk in through the kitchen. Dominic looked at his ex-mistress. For the first time in years, he felt a twisted sense of respect for her. You're wicked, Sasha. I learned from the best, she replied. They spent the next 2 days plotting. They bought waiter uniforms. They forged ID badges. They studied the floor plan of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Temple of Dendor wing, where the gala was being held. Dominic shaved. He got a haircut. When he put on the crisp white shirt and black vest of a waiter, he looked in the mirror and didn't see a server. He saw an assassin. Saturday night, Dominic whispered to his reflection. Checkmate Esther. But unbeknownst to them, a Morgan, the city in her penthouse. Esther was tucking Lloyd into bed. She kissed his forehead and walked out to the living room where Rayburn was waiting. They're moving, Rayburn said. Sasha cashed the check, but she didn't buy a plane ticket. She went to a men's warehouse in Queens, and then she went to a uniform supply store. Esther walked to the window, swirling a glass of sparkling water. They're going to hit the gala, Esther deduced instantly. It's the only play they have left. Public humiliation. Do you want me to alert security? Have them arrested on sight? Rayburn asked. Esther took a sip of water. She thought about the last 3 years. The fear, the loneliness, the way Dominic had looked at her that night at the dinner table like she was garbage to be thrown out. She didn't just want safety. She wanted closure, total, absolute closure. No. Esther turned around, a dangerous smile playing on her lips. Let them in. Rayburn blinked. Ms. Morgan. That's risky. I want them in the room, Rayburn. I want them to think they've won. I want Dominic to stand in front of the world and show them exactly who he is. And then I'm going to drop the other shoe, Esther said. I have one more witness, someone Dominic has forgotten about entirely. Who? The person who opened the door for Sasha that night, Esther said. The person who heard everything. Rayburn's eyes widened in understanding. Let them come, Esther whispered. It's going to be a night to remember. The Temple of Dendor at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was bathed in sapphire light. The massive sandstone temple dating back to 15 BC glowed ethereally against the modern glass walls that looked out onto Central Park. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The creme de la creme of the global tech and finance world sipped champagne. There were senators, tech moguls, and A-list celebrities. They were all there for one reason, the Blue Ocean reveal. Esther Morgan stood backstage, smoothing the lapels of her tuxedo dress. It was white, stark, and architectural. She looked like a modern-day warrior queen. 2 minutes, Ms. Morgan, the stage manager whispered into his headset. Is everything in place? Esther asked, not looking up from her notes. Yes, ma'am. Security is holding position. And the guests you expected are in the perimeter. Good. Esther took a deep breath. Let the show begin. Out on the floor, weaving through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres, were 2 servers who didn't fit in. Dominic's waiter jacket was tight. A Morgan the shoulders and Sasha's skirt was visibly cheap compared to the staff uniforms. They were sweating. "This is insane," Sasha hissed, ducking behind a pillar as a camera crew panned past. "There are too many people." "It's perfect," Dominic muttered, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. "The more witnesses, the better. When she takes that stage, we move. I grab the mic. You start screaming about the baby. We cause chaos. Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers. "Please welcome the CEO of Nemesis Holdings, Esther Morgan." The room erupted in applause. Electronic music swelled. Esther walked onto the stage, projected onto massive screens behind her. She looked commanding, radiant. "Thank you." Her voice echoed crisp and clear. 3 years ago, I was a woman without a voice. I was told my place was in the shadows. Tonight I am here to bring something into the light. She clicked a remote. The screen behind her changed to a complex schematic of a water filtration molecule. The blue ocean technology is not just a product. It is a promise that clean water is a human right, not a luxury. "Liar!" The scream tore through the room, shattering the moment. Dominic dropped his tray. Champagne glasses shattered on the stone floor. He shoved a security guard aside and sprinted toward the stage. "She's a fraud!" Dominic bellowed, his face, red veins bulging in his neck. "She's a liar and a thief!" The crowd gasped. Phones were raised instantly, live streaming the meltdown. Esther didn't move. She didn't flinch. She stood on the stage looking down at him with an expression of mild curiosity. "Security!" someone yelled. "No!" Esther raised her hand. "Let him speak!" The guards hesitated. Dominic scrambled up the stairs onto the stage. He stood panting, seizing the podium microphone. "You all think she's a genius," Dominic screamed into the mic, his voice booming through the museum. "She's my wife. She's Esther van der Hoven. She faked her own death 3 years ago. She cut herself smeared blood on our terrace and ran away to steal my son." A shockwave went through the audience. Sasha ran to the front of the stage, playing her part. "It's true she kidnapped him. We have been searching for 3 years. Dominic pointed a shaking finger at Esther. "She's a sociopath. She framed me for murder, to steal my company's patents. She is unfit to run a lemonade stand, let alone a corporation. I demand custody of my son, Lloyd. Where is he, Esther? Where are you hiding him?" The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. All eyes were on Esther. Esther walked slowly to the microphone. She gently took it from Dominic's hand. He was too winded, too manic to stop her. "Are you finished, Dominic?" she asked quietly. "I'm finished when you're in handcuffs," he spat. Esther turned to the audience. "This man claims I ran away without cause. He claims I am the villain. But stories have 3 sides: his, hers, and the truth." She looked up at the control booth. "Play the video." The massive screen behind them went black. Then grainy security footage appeared. It was dated 3 years ago. The timestamp 7:45 p.m. The location, the dining room of the Hamptons estate. Dominic's face went pale. "What is this? I disabled the cameras." "You disabled the external cameras," Esther said into the mic. "You forgot about the nanny cam I installed in the dining room the week before, when I was preparing the nursery." On the screen, the audience watched in high-definition horror. They saw Dominic sipping wine. They saw Sasha strut in. They heard every word. Dominic on screen. "Esther, meet Sasha. I'm the reason he cancelled dinner, sweetie." Dominic on screen. "You're moving your mistress into our home and moving your pregnant wife to the servants' quarters. You've become a ghost in this house, anyway." Sasha on screen. "The only mistake was thinking you could keep a man like him with nothing but a casserole recipe." The crowd began to murmur. Disgust rippled through the room. But Esther wasn't done. "Fast forward," she commanded. The video skipped to later that night, 2 a.m. The kitchen. Dominic and Sasha were there. Esther was nowhere to be seen. Dominic on screen. "If she doesn't sign the post-nup amendment tomorrow, I'm going to cut her off. No medical insurance, no access to the accounts. She'll be on the street with that brat." Sasha on screen. "Why wait? If she were to have an accident on those stairs, it solves everything." Dominic on screen. "Don't tempt me. I wish she would just disappear." The video cut to black. The silence in the museum was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. Esther turned to Dominic. He was trembling, his face a mask of terror. Sasha was backing away toward the exit, but security guards blocked her path. "You didn't kill me, Dominic," Esther said, her voice amplified, ringing with power. "But you conspired to destroy me. You wished for my death, and you abandoned your child before he was even born." She stepped closer to him. "You asked why I left. I left because a mother protects her young from predators. And you, Dominic, you are a predator." This is illegal recording," Dominic stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "It's inadmissible. This isn't a court of law." "Dominic." Esther smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. "This is the court of public opinion, and you just lost." She gestured to the side of the stage. "Oh, and regarding custody, I would like to introduce you to the witness who can testify to your fitness as a father." From the wings, an elderly woman walked out. It was Mrs. Galloway, the housekeeper. She looked stern, holding a Bible. "Mrs. Galloway," Dominic whispered. Mrs. Galloway took the mic. "I heard them," she said, her voice shaking with righteous anger. "That night, I heard Mr. Vanderhoven tell his mistress that he hoped the baby would die so he wouldn't have to pay child support. I was too scared to speak up then. But Ms. Morgan, she gave me the courage." Dominic fell to his knees. It was over. The live stream comments were scrolling so fast, they were a blur, millions of people calling for his arrest, his ruin. Esther looked down at him. "You wanted my attention, Dominic. You have it. Now security. Please remove the trash." "No, no," Dominic screamed as 4 guards hauled him up. "I'm Dominic Vanderhoven. I own this city." "You own nothing," Esther said. "I bought your debt this morning, Dominic. Nemesis Holdings now owns your mortgage, your car loans, and your credit lines. I'm foreclosing. Tonight." As they dragged him away, kicking and screaming, Sasha tried to blend into the crowd, but a police officer stepped in her path, handcuffs ready. Esther turned back to the stunned audience. She smoothed her dress. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, her voice steady. "Now, as I was saying, the blue ocean filter is designed to remove toxins. I think we've successfully demonstrated that tonight." The applause started slowly, then built into a roar, a standing ovation. It wasn't just for the technology. It was for the Queen who had returned from the dead to reclaim her throne. Backstage hours later, Esther held sleeping Lloyd in her arms. He was heavy, warm, and safe. She looked out the window at the city lights. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Transfer complete, Vanderhoven estate title. Owner Esther Morgan. She kissed Lloyd's head. "We're going home, baby," she whispered. The real home. Dominic was in a holding cell. Sasha was in interrogation. And Esther. She was just getting started. What a satisfying ending. Dominic thought he could throw Esther away like trash, but he forgot that diamonds are made under pressure. He created his own worst enemy and paid the ultimate price, losing his fortune, his reputation, and his son, all while the world watched. It just goes to show that you should never underestimate a quiet person. Their silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. Esther didn't just get revenge, she got justice. If you enjoyed this story of karma and triumph, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. What would you have done in Esther's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.